Listen, you remember her, don't you? Those eyes that could break your heart without saying a single word. Winona Ryder wasn't just another pretty face in Hollywood. She was the girl who made you feel something real in a world of plastic smiles and empty promises. But here's what they never told you about the woman behind those haunting eyes. Long before she ever stepped foot on a movie set, Winona Laura Horowitz was learning what it meant to survive. Born in 1971, this little girl spent her childhood shivering under thin blankets in communes where the heater died before dawn. Her parents? Good people. Smart people. Her father lived surrounded by towers of books. Her mother wrote with an imagination that burned brighter than any lamp in their drafty rooms. But love doesn't pay the rent. Between 1976 and 1980, they moved constantly. By age 5, she knew the sound of packing tape better than stability. Winter seeped through every window. She'd curl up watching her own breath in the cold air, wondering if other kids felt this uncertain about tomorrow. Some months, every sweater she wore had belonged to someone else first. The family's income rose and fell like ocean tides, freelance work that left bills sitting on the table longer than the food. And then came the real nightmare: school. Picture this. It's 1980. She's 12 years old, walking into a Northern California classroom. Thrifted sweaters, short hair, gentle manners. She might as well have painted a target on her back. The whispers started immediately. Shoulders pushed her aside. She wasn't just ignored, she was hunted. The bullying got so vicious that she'd hide in bathroom stalls, gripping her books like they were the only friends she had left. Those years, she'd whisper decades later, her voice still carrying the weight of it, were the hardest part of my young life. Each new school felt colder than the last. Each hallway taught her to read danger in the shift of energy, to disappear into corners where cruelty couldn't find her. Stories became her only escape. Books, films, places where her softness wasn't a weakness, where sensitivity could finally be seen as strength. But here's where the miracle happened. At 12 years old, this scared little girl, with everything against her, stepped into the American Conservatory Theater in 1983. And when those lights hit her face, teachers didn't see a beginner. They saw a storm trapped in a fragile frame. That depth carved by cold rooms and constant moves, and the quiet dread of always being one step from disappearing. It poured out of her. By 13, she was hitting auditions, cold hallways, empty waiting rooms where her breath misted in the air. She mailed homemade tapes with trembling hands and heard no so often it became background noise. Each rejection reopened wounds from those classroom torments. But she kept showing up. Same patched jacket she'd outgrown. Same fierce determination. Directors who dismissed her as too odd couldn't forget those eyes. When she finally landed her first film, Lucas. At 15, in 1986, she didn't celebrate. She held that SAG card like it might vanish, terrified one mistake would send her family back to those cold rooms and thin blankets. She never believed anything would last. But when those cameras rolled, magic happened. The girl who hid in bathroom stalls poured every wound into her characters. Pain became precision. Loneliness became clarity. She didn't just act. She bled truth onto the screen. And then came the explosion. At 17 in 1989, Heathers made her a cult icon. At 18, Edward Scissorhands pushed her into global stardom. 56 million at the box office. The world saw effortless brilliance. Nobody saw her rehearsing until her hands shook, terrified that forgetting one line would send her back into darkness. Behind every smile was suffocating costumes and dehydration. Behind every graceful premiere was her collapsing on trailer floors, forcing herself up for retakes because perfection pressed down like molten lead. By 1994, with Little Women, she was doing 18-hour days. Voice raw, fingers cramped. The film grossed 50 million worldwide, and critics loved it. But she was moving through scenes in a fever trance, sleep deprivation making everything feel dreamlike. By 27, with Girl Interrupted, the film she fought to bring to life, she was filming in a real psychiatric ward. Every corridor whispering with ghosts she knew too well. The 90s weren't her reign. They were her battlefield. And then 2001 arrived like a wrecking ball. She's 30 years old. After a severe injury, doctors prescribed her painkillers so potent they blurred reality itself. Heart racing, body foreign, drifting through a hollow fog. One of those doctors would later face sanctions, but when it mattered, nobody cared. December 2001, Beverly Hills, 5th Avenue. An arrest for allegedly taking over $5,000 in merchandise. Flashbulbs exploded around her like weapons. The world had its spectacle, Winona Ryder, fallen darling. What they didn't report, she was found guilty, sentenced to 3 years probation, community service, counseling. But the legal sentence was nothing compared to Hollywood's verdict. Overnight, roles vanished. Scripts were pulled from her hands. Insurance companies blacklisted her as uninsurable. Every studio door slammed shut. The real devastation? The silence. Moving through dim apartments where scripts lay untouched on the floor, pages curling. Sitting against walls in the dark, trying to understand how one moment swallowed her entire life. That was my real Girl Interrupted, she'd say later, barely above a whisper. I just wasn't taking care of myself. For over a decade, Hollywood forgot her. Completely. Thoroughly. Like she never existed. But here's what separates legends from footnotes. She gets a call about a show called Stranger Things. When it premiered in 2016, playing Joyce Byers, it was like the first light breaking through a storm. On set, she caught herself in the monitor, older, steadier, a little fractured, but fully intact. I'm still here, she thought. The comeback wasn't just professional. It was personal resurrection. A SAG award. Viral celebration. A new generation discovering her while the old one welcomed her home. She proved you can lose everything. Your career, your reputation, your sense of self, and still rise again. Let's talk about her heart, because that story's just as brutal. She's 19 at a Hollywood party when she locks eyes with Johnny Depp. Time didn't stop. It folded. It felt like the universe paused, she'd whisper later, and he'd admit, there was nothing before Winona. For 4 years, they were magic. Late-night conversations, scribbled love notes. Filming Edward Scissorhands together, where their real tenderness became the film's heartbeat. When Johnny inked Winona forever onto his skin, it wasn't for cameras. It was a vow. But fame gnaws everything. By 1992, paparazzi turned their private sweetness into public spectacle. Schedules pulled them apart. Tiny misunderstandings grew sharp. Ken came Dave Pirner in 1993, the musician who wrote Runaway Train for her, who made her laugh like she hadn't since she was a teenager. 3 years of Minneapolis winters and handwritten letters in guitar cases. But by 1996, distance devoured them too. Phone calls grew shorter, silences heavier. Today at 54, Winona Ryder stands with $22 million in net worth. San Francisco mansions with leaded glass windows overlooking fog-shrouded bays. Hollywood Hills villas with no neighbors. New York apartments featured in Architectural Digest with 18-foot ceilings and Art Deco panels from 1930s nightclubs. But her real wealth? Over a decade with designer Scott McKinley Hahn, a man who chose patience over certainty, presence over promises. When Stranger Things resurrected her in 2016, he stayed just beyond the glow, close enough to anchor her, far enough not to eclipse her rebirth. She's selective with roles now, not chasing fame, choosing emotional truth, supporting children's welfare, mental health advocacy, literacy programs, all quietly without attention. She doesn't dwell in shadows of past mistakes. She lives in the peace she built brick by brick, heartbreak by heartbreak, roll by roll. Here's what Winona Ryder's story really teaches us: that the girl who got bullied in school hallways became the woman who defined a generation. That poverty and cold nights and displacement don't break you. They forge something deeper than Hollywood can manufacture. That you can fall from grace, be forgotten completely, and still return radiant. That some loves burn too brightly for this world, but teach you how to love anyway. That fragility isn't weakness, it's the courage to stay soft in a brutal industry. Winona Ryder isn't just a comeback story. She's proof that when life strips everything away, your career, your love, your dignity, your sense of self, you can still rise, older, steadier, a little fractured, but fully, beautifully intact. And in those haunting eyes that first captured us 40 years ago, they still carry entire worlds. Only now, they carry wisdom earned through storms most people will never survive. That's not Hollywood magic. That's the human spirit refusing to break. That's Winona Ryder.